everybody, I'm Suzanne. In today's video, we're going to do this little painting right here of Cades Cove, Tennessee. It is a area of East Tennessee that is very visited. It's in the, Gatlinburg, Sevierville area, and it's a touristy place. People love to see these iconic country roads and lots of deer, lots of black bear, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. Maybe a lot of you have already been there. I think everybody goes to Cades Cove, especially around here, and it's this whole thing is a very iconic scene. So that's what we're going to paint today, and we're going to do it alla prima. You're going to get to see, here on YouTube, you get to see the time-lapse version, but if you want to see the real-time version, you're going to have to catch it on my Patreon channel. So be looking for it there if you want to see the real-time thing. And but it's a fun piece. We'll talk about it here at the end, how we manipulated everything to make this happen. Again, this was done in roughly 2.5 hours maybe. And yeah, it was a fun piece. So sit back, let's have fun, and we're going to paint Cades Cove's landscape.
I start out by doing a very, very loose sketch using a transparent red oxide. That's it, just a loose sketch.
All right, we're going to do a quick little landscape. This is an area in East Tennessee called Cades Cove, and it's a very frequented location for folks. And so I just have a little reference here, and I am picking my colors. Now I'm going to be changing it up some. There's some foliage and things that I'm not really fond of in the picture, and for artistic license, I'm going to make it my own. So, but I'm going to tell you what we have here on the palette. I've got ultramarine blue. This is Blue Ridge. I have King's Blue, Michael Harding. I have 2 titanium whites here. I have raw umber, which is Winsor Newton. I have, this was, when I did the quick little sketch, and you can see it's just really a wash. I used a color called Transparent Earth Orange, which is a gambling color. I like to kind of establish my composition with transparent colors. I have Ivory Black, just a little bit of, this is Michael Harding. I have Italian Green Umber, Michael Harding. I have Sepia, which is Sennelier, and I have the Sap Green, which is Winsor Newton. And this is what I'm starting with. We'll see. I may end up adding other colors. Who knows?
I start with mixing a color for my back mountain. I'm using the King's Blue, a little bit of Sap Green, and Ivory Black. And it's interesting when I'm mixing the color on my gray palette, it looks a lot darker on a white substrate. So I actually mix a little bit of titanium white in, and I'm popping that in and just getting in a background. And remember, I am using a super slick substrate, so you really have to use a light hand when putting this down. Now I made the sky just a lighter version of the mountain. Really, it's just a light gray, and I'm mixing a little bit more titanium white in it just so I can have the opacity. And so once I kind of get that sky in, and then I start working the mountain, I will use a soft brush just to really blend down any of the weird little sticky up edges or transparencies that this substrate kind of allows. So again, using a soft hand is really important. And I switched to a sable brush. So it's actually a Red Dot by Rosemary. It's a synthetic sable, and it's a super soft brush. So when using a slick surface, use a super soft brush. As you can see, I snuck on a little Richardson's Yellow Citron by the Shiva series, and I'm putting that into the sky too. Folks, remember, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel anytime, and that way you'll know when the next video comes out. And okay, so I'm adding just a little bit of detail, and I'm using a combination of the raw umber and ultramarine blue. And again, using a soft brush. I don't want it to be very detailed. I really need everything to be soft, and keeping your values pretty close and soft in the background. Cool temperatures, lighter values in the background will create the depth that you need. Now, Okay, so there's a lot. There's this interesting grayish green grass that's everywhere in this piece, and so I'm mixing several different values of grass, and you can see I'm using the a little bit of King's Blue, yellow ochre, titanium white, and raw umber, and I've got that little bit of green there too. I've got the sap green as well as the Shiva yellow citron. But, I'm just I need it just to be kind of that gray color. So there's a tree line in the way, way back. And I need to just kind of keep it soft. I'm popping that in there and just moving through the piece. And you can see I changed my values up. I can add titanium white when I need to. And just popping everything in there. So I work from the background to the foreground. And that helps me keep everything straight. Now there is a little tiny road, like a little windy country road in this piece, so I really need to kind of establish where that's going. So I'm using a combination of titanium white and the King's Blue and a little umber. So it's a very soft light gray, and of course it's going to be whiter in the background, and it will get a lot more intense and darker as it comes towards the foreground. But I really just needed to establish that. Now I'm putting down the grasses, and you can see which colors I'm pulling in. A little bit of sap green, yellow ochre, and popping down the grass. Just again, it's almost like a place marker. I've got to see where everything's going, and this is allowing me to see the entire composition all at once. So you see I've kind of put some of the darker values in the foreground of the little road here, which will get covered up with more color. You'll see. Now I'm starting in on the trees, and what I was trying to explain, if you saw my hands gesticulating just a little bit, was that the value of the trees in the background and in the foreground are not that different. They're actually very close in value. But what's different about them is the temperature. So I'm using a lot more blues in the trees in the background, and I'll use a lot more warmer greens with more yellows in the foreground. But the values are pretty darn close, you'll see. So I'm just kind of establishing my background trees, and it looks weird, I know, but there is method to my madness here, and there's my little yellow citron that I like so well. And like I said, this Shiva yellow citron is a great substitute for any of your cad greens because it is opaque as well. It's a nice and opaque color, and that's really handy when you're trying to put a lighter color on top of a darker color working alla prima, because it doesn't blend so much. It just kind of lays on top, which is really what I need it to do. And again, keeping that soft hand or light, putting very light pressure on your brush will allow you to work this way, alla prima, on these slick substrates like this. Now I switched to a little squirrel number 2 pointed round. It's one of the Workbench Warrior series of the Rosemary brush line. I'm on my like second set of these brushes because I love them so much. You get like 10 brushes in a pack, and it's not very expensive, and it's totally worth it. Now this little squirrel brush is really doing the trick. Remember, this is actually a very small piece for me. This is an 8x10, and this is a small section of it, so I need a pointed round to do this job, and this little brush is working like a champ. So I'm getting in my dark values and my light values, but remember, I'm keeping it cool back there, folks. There is not a lot of yellowy greens back there. You see some bushes back there, those trees that have a little bit of yellow in them, but they're just kind of a different tree. But the actual trees themselves, the big trees, a lot of blues in that. Now I'm starting into the tree in the foreground, and like I said, the values of this tree and the trees we just did are actually quite close, but you can see I am going a lot warmer. So I'm using a combination of ivory black and the sap green and a little bit of the ultramarine blue, but you can see the tree itself is already looking warmer because of the amount of the lighter greens that are in it. And I've decided, instead of trying to paint with a really light hand on top of that very, very wet paint, I'm actually cutting out some of the branches with the wipeout tool. You know how much I love these things. These things are da bomb. So if you don't have one, you might want to look into it, because they really help, especially with this type of work. ALLA PRIMA. And again, on slick surfaces like this, I love them for signing my name. And I love them also for doing whiskers on cats and little hairs and all kind of detail. And you'll see here towards the end, I'll use it again to add some more grass and texture. But meanwhile, for now, I am using the pointed round squirrel number 2 and doing the little branches. And it's funny because I really didn't know what type of tree this was when I was painting it. But after I was into it a little bit, I realized it's some type of evergreen that probably has another tree or bush growing in it, which is not uncommon, especially here in East Tennessee. We've got a lot of plants like English ivy, kudzu, and other invasive species of plants that will kind of climb up into other plants and other trees and stuff. I'm not really sure. I'm guessing on this one. But anyway, if you haven't been to East Tennessee and Cades Cove, you really need to check it out. It's right there in the Smoky Mountains. You can go ahead and catch Dollywood, Gatlinburg, and all the fun stuff in Sevierville, and then go for a hike in Cades Cove. That's where this is. And it's, like I said, a very well-visited tourist area here in East Tennessee. We're quite proud of it, and it's a nice place to see a lot of wildlife. Now I'm showing you here too, I've got some other colors I haven't hardly touched yet, and I'm putting in a lot of ivory black. And the reason I like ivory black is it's dark, but it's a warm dark. It's not a dead flat dark, so I love it. Now I'm cutting in some tree branches in here, and don't worry, I'm not going to leave it like that. I just needed to have a space to be able to put those trunks in, but I'll get back to it. And just putting in some more grass, went back to the softer sable, the synthetic sable, the red dot brush, and popping in some more color. And I'm going to have a fence row coming in here in just a little bit, so I've got to kind of establish my shapes. In my photo reference that I'm working from, there seems to be a mowed out area, which I guess is to keep the fence row clean. I don't know. So you see there's like that kind of clear strip there, and I just kind of liked how it looked, so I wanted to include that. But meanwhile, I'm putting in some shadows and being very conscious of where my light source is coming from. The light is coming kind of from the upper left-hand corner. So things on, we know where the light is going to hit the trees. So I'm using another repurposed brush. This is a 278 series brush. It was supposed to be a filbert, but it's all wide now. But it's great for making this grassy texture without going nuts and painting each individual blade of grass. It's creating a lot of interesting texture, and that's just a true testament to these brushes, folks. They may get old, they may get worn out, and you may think that they're no good anymore, but they're always great to repurpose. And again, I love these brushes. Now, I see that there's kind of a redder cast in the back, and I went ahead and grabbed out the Gamblin transparent red that I was using earlier, because it's nice that you can really pop that in, and there just seemed to be that kind of cast in the grass up there. And it worked like a charm. I didn't feel like squirting out any other colors, and this worked great. Now, my substrate was kind of in a hole, so I actually used some a Grumbacher Vine charcoal box just to set my painting up just a little bit. So, yeah. But meanwhile, I'm just moving through the piece and adding other areas to our little country road here. Time to cut in some fence posts. Now, of course, this is an interesting perspective thing that you've got to think about. They are very close together, far away and small, but as they get bigger, they're further away. And as they're further away, they're closer together and smaller, right? So, did I say that right? I think you know what I'm trying to say. But anyway, I'm using my wipeout tool to kind of put in the fence posts. And a lot of this is going to be covered in grass. But I just wanted to show you. So now, the fence posts that are far away, I brought out some manganese violet. And the manganese violet with a little bit of umber, it's really almost not detectable. But I know that they got to be cooler back there. They're going to be lighter in value and cooler. And so they almost look like a little windy snake back in the background. But it's okay. I like how this looks. And as they get closer to you, they get a little browner and a little more darker in value, and they start to change. Now, obviously I got to back it back out so you can see it because I keep moving around here. Being mindful where the light is, you can see I left part of it unpainted because I've got to put the light on that side of the fence post. All the while, Mr. Singer is jumping on my back, and I'm trying to stay steady, and this dog is driving me nuts. So he's actually very bored. So he keeps pushing up on me. He's bored. He knows it's lunchtime, almost lunchtime, and he knows after lunch. Where do you go after lunch, Singer? Do you go for walks after lunch? He likes his walks. So you gotta wait, man. You gotta wait. Let me finish the painting. All right, back to the fence posts. Now I'm moving around the fences, and I'm also creating more grass coming out. There, it comes out past the actual fence posts into the street just a little bit. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to create that grass without having to do blade by blade by blade. And I'm putting in little white bits here and there, and then I grab out the ivory sword brush. This is a 1/4-inch ivory sword brush, and it's doing the trick. It's able to get all the little pieces of grass, the little shiny parts, all that detail is kind of going in, and it's doing exactly what I needed it to do. And I kind of had to play around with it for just a minute to figure it out, but once I did, I was off to the races, and you can see how well that brush does with putting in detail. Yes, I'm painting in those areas, those tree branches that I carved out before. Keeping in mind where the light is, it's only going to be highlighted on the left side of the branches, just like the fence posts are all highlighted on the left side of the branch of the posts. And now I'm using the small pointed round squirrel brush and putting in what I call little windows into the back. So that you can see through the trees, the light that shows through the trees into that backfield, couple little branches back there, that sort of thing. I'm just kind of getting in a little bit more detail because, folks, I'm getting close to the end on this painting. And I just kind of look around trying to find where do I need a little bit more detail, what else can I do here. I'm getting close to the end. And you'll see that I'll use that little brush and a little of that Shiva. You gotta love that Shiva green. We call it Shiva green in the studio. All my students like the color, and it's actually yellow citron is what it's actually called. Richardson's Shiva series yellow citron. So you can see that tree in the foreground is much warmer than the trees in the background, and it's got more detail and there's more things going on. And again, folks, you want to put depth into your paintings, and I'd say this is true for everything, but especially in landscapes. Be mindful of your values and your temperatures, and that's really, I think, one of the biggest things that you can do. Also, leave your detail for the foreground. Don't put as much detail in the background as you do in the foreground, because then you get a really flat painting. But yeah, save your detail and all your fun stuff for the front of the painting. And I'm just kind of popping in little branches and stuff. And folks, we're getting ready to wind it up. I will be using that handy dandy little paint scraper here in a bit, and I will be using it to put some more little grass details in and also sign the painting. And then I'm going to be done, folks, and we'll talk about this on the other side.
And here's our finished piece. So you can see that by manipulating your values and your temperatures, you can create the depth that you need. So you can see back here, my sky is just kind of this relatively, kind of a grayish blue sky. And the mountain sort of is just a little bit darker value, but basically you've got the same temperatures and colors. And as you're far away, things are cooler and less in value. And as it gets closer to you, you start getting a more intense value and warmer temperatures. So you can see the distance, even though these trees are basically very close in value, this is a much cooler looking tree and this is warmer. So you can see with the addition of using the yellow citron versus there was really not much yellow citron back here. So you start warming it up. Now you can look at some of the detail that's added. Some of it was painted in and some of it was scratched out. And that's kind of fun, right? I really love my paint scraper. Now, even with the fence row, back here we had a lot of purples. It was a little bit of lighter value and there was a little, it's hard to see, but there's a lot cooler temperature back there. I did use the manganese violet back here. So I wanted to create the, distance in the fence post. And as it comes up, we start becoming darker in value and warmer in temperature. So that, folks, we're calling it a wrap. Ta-da! This was fun. Now, the way all of this was manipulated in that very short period of time that we had to paint this is that we're going through values and temperature. There's very little detail. This is just an 8 by 10. So you don't, unless I was going to paint with little brushes the whole time, you really aren't going to get. You don't want to put a lot of detail in. And since this is ALLA PRIMA, I really wanted to move through it pretty fast. So I depended on using color, contrast, and value. So you can see in the background, you can see up in the mountains how the values are very close, the sky and the back mountain, and it's very blurry, not a lot of detail. And as you come to the foreground, our temperatures start to warm up a little bit. They start to intensify, and it gets warmer the closer to the foreground. And that's how you create depth in your pieces, okay? So there was very little detail, and you saw how I even used the paint scraper there at the end just to create a little bit more fun detail, because, but I saved the detail for the foreground. Did you catch that? Did you catch it? So again, remember folks, if you have any questions about anything I did here today, you know what to do. Leave it down here in the comments section and I'll get right to you. And yeah, this was fun. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed today's video. I hope you did. And if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to see today's real-time video of this particular painting, you're going to have to check out my Patreon channel. So from Kingsport, Tennessee, not too far from Cades Cove, I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.